Hi, and welcome to Studio 411. I'm your host, Larry De Silva. Well, I say it all the time, but I'll say it again. We've got a show for you. We've got a young lady, Lahna Turner, joining us today via California satellite, and she has become one of the hottest females on the comedy circuit with her sharp wit and hilarious songs. Lahna certainly holds nothing back, but she does it in such a nice, sweet way, but you just can't help but love her. We actually were supposed to have Lahna not too long ago, but believe it or not, Lahna had trouble finding the studio, so she was kind enough to kind of do a little taping of her escapades, and before we get to a conversation with Ms. Turner, let's take a look.
It says here on my phone that I'm 2 miles away
from Connecticut and Studio 411.
Where's the beach? Oh, I think I found it. I'm so excited. I can't wait to get to the beach. It's got to be this way. I'm so ready.
Connecticut?
This is so beautiful. This is like the prettiest beach I've ever seen. Hey guys, are you here for the show? No. So you're not here for the show?
What show?
I don't think I'm in Connecticut.
That wasn't the beach. I don't know what's with this phone, but I will be at
Studio 411 with Larry De Silva.
All right, now that she made it home safe and sound back to California, we welcome to Studio 411 Lahna Turner. Lahna, thank you for finally connecting with us.
Thank you. I could never find the studio. I ended up having to turn around and come back.
Yes, I do love that hot springs. That, my goodness, the old joints felt good, like being in one of those things. So, listen, tell me, you are, as always, very busy. But first, if I may, I wanted to share with the audience. Not long ago, I was on vacation down in Florida, and I happened to be watching the news, as one might when they're on vacation. And I see this young lady being interviewed, and I'm like, I don't know what it was, something just caught my eye, and I thought to myself, wow, she really is, you know, not only nice looking, but she also is very funny. And she was being interviewed for a comedy gig that she was doing down there. And we were down there for about a week, and I did my best Ed Sullivan impression. I sent her off an email and said, hey, you know, I've got a show, we'd love to have you on, and maybe we could connect while we're down in Florida. Sure enough, went to a club in Naples, and we got to meet and see a great show, and there you go. The rest is history. So we seek them out even while we're on vacation. So, but again, it was so great to connect with you, and you know, you were so busy, and I know you've got a couple of projects that you're working on. So let's talk a little bit about that first.
Well, I was going to say, you sounds like you're always working. You know, you're on vacation and you can't even stop.
Well,
so.
Again, credit where credit is due to that newscaster, because she interviewed you about your appearance, and as you told me, you were down there also because your parents live in Florida. But again, it was just kismet. We just connected, and I thought it was a great time. But tell me, you're working on a couple of things. For those who don't know, she is the widow of a legendary comedian, Ralphie, and she has some projects in the works. So tell me a little bit about that before we continue.
So Ralphie passed away, unfortunately. Passed away 2 years ago, coming in October. And 4 years ago, we filmed a documentary together. It didn't, like any good documentary, it doesn't end where you think it's going to. It was supposed to be a weight loss documentary. Ralphie was a very, very overweight man. A lot of people never really understood our relationship. People can make big assumptions, which I don't blame them. Like, why would I, as a petite woman, be with this man who was like 500 pounds? And I make a lot of jokes about it, but the truth is that I loved him. We were together for many years, and he was fat and broke, and He was just a really big, sweet man, but he was also very sick, especially towards the end of his life. And the documentarian Kat Reinhardt was able to capture that and show a very, very intimate story. And I actually have been working very hard to get the film completed, but not creatively. I've had to bow out of the creative process because I'm a subject. I wasn't supposed to be a subject, or very lightly in the periphery of the film, but as it turned out, I was very much a big part of this project. So Ralphie and I are going to be premiering in this documentary, as well as a lot of other people who were involved at the end of his life, in the Nashville Film Festival.
And now this one, so that I have it straight, is this the one that is the Love You Ralphie, or is this another one?
Right, so we did an Indiegogo campaign for Love You Ralphie, which is from the same hard drive. So Kat, the documentarian and producer and everything that has to do with this film getting completed, she filmed him for 9 months. And as you can imagine, there's a ton of content. And in those hard drives is a 1-hour special. So the 1-hour special is pretty much done. The documentary, we finished that first because that's we feel is the main project, but the Indiegogo campaign was to raise funds to finish the 1-hour special, and that's also going to hopefully come out in conjunction with the documentary.
I'm sick of feeling like a monster. I'm sick of feeling like a monster all the time. I'm sick of walking down the street and people looking at me like I'm a monster. I'm sick of living in Los Angeles, feeling like a monster, New York like a monster, in my marriage like a monster.
And push. When I first met him, I thought, this is a simple fix. 2.5 pounds a week, right?
How many years ago was that?
16 years.
I'm tired. I'm tired.
I just want a happy ending.
You tell my story, be honest, good and bad.
For those of you who are not familiar with Ralphie, again, we've got a little trailer about the Love You Ralphie, if nothing else, to give you a sampling of his talent. So we'll take a look.
One rule at a Ralphie May show, and that's to have a good time. You know who you need to see. Put your hands together for Mr. Ralphie May, everybody.
Hey everybody, how are you? Thank you for the water rats. I'm making sure I don't drown. Is there waitresses that go to the tables? Or to the people? Or they gotta go upstairs only? Yeah. Okay. Down on North Providence, white people. When the truth is, all them Newport white people are looking down on all of us, okay? My agent called me up, right? And he goes, "Are you sitting down?" And I go, always. Yeah, I'm flying upside down. I can't take your call right now.
I apologize, ma'am. I will get to jokes you approve of in just a minute.
I've been a heartbreaker and a name taker my whole life, ladies.
I love there's a bit in that clip there that we were able to use that he was appearing in a couple of theaters, one actually not too far away from where we are in Connecticut, and then there was another one where he was in Rhode Island. And I love the clip where he's basically saying how people in like East Providence rag on each other, people in North Providence, but the people in Newport, they're all laughing their butts off because, you know, of course, Newport is where all the rich people live, so they're like turning their nose up at everybody. I thought it was just, yeah, anybody who knows Rhode Island and whatever, I spent a lot of time there, I found that quite amusing. Now, getting back to you, and we are here, of course, with writer, comedian Lahna Turner. Tell me a little bit about your background. I was surprised you were born in Texas, correct?
Actually, I was born in Canada and then moved to Texas when I was like early teenage years. So
Really?
I always say born in Canada, raised in Texas. Howdy, A.
Oh, now, do you have like a dual citizenship or no?
I do, because my parents are Americans, but I was born in Canada, so I have dual citizenship, which is
Nice.
awesome.
Well, these days it's important. Otherwise, they might kick you back to Canada.
I know, and then I have to sharpen my A's.
Yeah,
Awesome.
exactly.
I love Canada. I love that I'm from there, and I mean, I love Texas too, but I feel very Canadian a lot of times. But I'm so LA now. I hate myself. I've lived in Los Angeles for like 20 years, and I love it here.
Now, you took up the guitar at an early age. We have a photo of Lahna taking him. Now, tell me, how old were you when that started? Because, again, I've always wanted to play guitar, and I think I'm too old to start playing a banjo or something, a little toy guitar.
I think it's never too late to start, but I did start when I was in second grade, so I was super little. And then I don't think my parents ever would have paid for all those lessons if they thought I'd be doing comedy with it. You know?
And now, when you started, did you say, well, I mean, were you trying to, were you self-taught or did you have lessons? In other words,
I had lessons.
You had lessons.
Yeah.
So do you recall, like, what was the first, like, piece of music that you played? I mean, what was it, like Green Sleeves, or what was it that they made you learn how to play?
One of the first songs Love You, want a Beatles song, like.
Oh, Love Me Do?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Oh, cool. All right. So it was a little more hip, music teacher, to say the least. And again, I love your guitar. Those of you, you'll see it on one of the clips we'll show. She's got her name embossed on there. I mean, it was just like, great. Her guitar case, which we have a shot of that, is like beat to pieces. We need to get you a new. We're going to take up a campaign to get her a new guitar case.
I need one bad. Yeah, that case is busted up, but it's like a super strong case. Though my guitar still looks good because it's been inside that case.
And now,
but I went to Country Music Hall of Fame and I saw all the guitars with the names in the necks, and I thought that was so cool. I was like, why don't people do this anymore? So I ended up fixing my guitar
absolutely.
like that.
She'll be at the Grand Ole Opry before we know it, and then she'll perform a couple of numbers and say, okay, I don't know. I don't know if we can. We're used to little Jimmy Dickens and Roy Acuff and people. Lahna's too hip for these folks, I got to tell you. Your comedy influences growing up. Who was it that you recall at a young age? You said, "Wow, really made an impression on you."
As a songwriter, this is going to sound really silly. My first concert, do you know Ralphie, this child's artist?
Oh yeah, Baby Beluga.
Ralphie live at the library was probably where it all started for me. And then after that, as I got older, I just was a huge comedy fan. So the more comedy I could watch, the better.
There you go.
Musically, I loved Ralphie. The one Little Duck.
Little Duck. Lahna will have her own version of that, but unfortunately we can't play that here. So yeah.
No, that's not. Yeah, it wouldn't be so kid friendly.
Actually, we've got a little clip of from one of her specials, and we'll show you a few seconds of that. Let's take a look.
Oh, I'm so glad to be here. This is so exciting. I know you're confused right now. You see a female comedian walk on stage with a guitar. You're like, look at the lesbian, right? I don't know if some of you guys know this. If you do, that's cool. But my husband is Ralphie, who you guys know, right? Ralphie May. If you didn't know that, that's the elephant in the room. That's a fat joke. But we're perfect together, because when we stand side by side, we look like the number 10. So.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Lahna Turner!
Back with guest Lahna Turner here on Studio 411. Now, it sounds like you were drawn more to almost like musical influences. What about like as far as someone who was just a straight out comedian, a male or female, who were growing up that you were attracted to as far as their style, maybe?
I mean, you like I loved everyone. I mean, like Kennison, Pryor, you know, all the go-to people that everybody always talks about. But then also, I mean, you can learn so much from even like young comics coming up, just watching how they stumble around. And so, I mean, starting out, I was just a fan of absorbing as much comedy as I could. And then when I first moved to LA, I was super lucky because I got to go to the Friars Club, which I don't believe exists anymore. And I got to see some of the really older comics that are no longer with us, like Red Buttons and Milton Berle. And
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
They're still in New York City, yeah. So if you're in Manhattan, yeah, they still have the Friars. George Jessel, Red Buttons, like you said. Oh my God, it was just like, you know, Pat Cooper. I mean, on and on and on. Just, you know, so many of them are gone. Pat's still with us as we tape, but yeah. I didn't realize there was one in Los Angeles, but yeah.
There used to be, but it's closed up now. But I mean, it's just one of those things, like, you know, as a young comic starting out, to see somebody who's been doing stand-up like more years than I've been alive. It just, because it really is the amount of time that you've been doing it, and you know, just really getting stronger and stronger, and watching like those older dudes and women too.
And women, I was thinking as I was planning for the interview with you, there was a woman, I was a kid growing up, so this goes back like 50, 60 years. She was a big player when it came to like LPs in those days, you know, comedy albums that used to be put out. Was a woman that I believe played an instrument of some kind, and she sang maybe. Her name was Rusty Warren. Did you ever hear of her?
No, but I'll have to look her up.
Yeah, you look her up, because she was like really bawdy, you know, like badass, you know, kind of comic.
It's shocking when you go back and look at some of the content, even from my grandparents' generation, how dirty they were, and how everybody thinks they're so edgy because they do something dirty. No, there's a lot of blue comedy back then too.
Yeah.
And it's really, really fun to go in and watch, and it's fun to see that on Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. That's a really, every time now, or I should say all the time, I get the association, like, oh, you're just like Mrs. Maisel. Like, it's cool. But,
yeah, Rusty was kind of like, think of like the comedic, not Sanford and Son, but the kind of female equivalent, Caucasian female equivalent of like Red Fox, Moms Mabley, those people back in the 50s and 60s. So Rusty Warren, yeah, check it out. I think you might say, I don't see any connection, but she was the one that kind of as much approaches you. They had Toady Fields, and they had, of course, Joan Rivers, but you know, they were different. First of all, they didn't do the musical thing like you do, so you kind of got like a double-edged sword going on there. I see you studied photography at Texas State University. So I would think you would have been a filmmaker by now. Well, you kind of are in a way.
I'm a filmmaker right now, but yeah, I mean, I had a prior career as a photojournalist. When I was 19, I stupidly wandered into the Associated Press office. I had been working for a couple of magazines and newspapers and freelancing, but I was arrogant enough to walk into AP and go, I'm looking for an internship. And the guy that worked there was smart enough to kick me out the door. But then he ran into me a day or two later at a press junket, and we became friends, and we created an internship for me at AP, and I worked there for a few years, and I got really, really good at being a photojournalist. I shot a lot of photos and got images on the wire, and I loved it. And had a car accident that changed my life, and ended up traveling for a year, and found myself doing stand-up another year or two later, but I did get my degree again. My parents, like, they put me through guitar lessons and helped me get through college, but here I am.
So they're to blame if they have any complaints.
No, they did everything they could.
There you go. No. I mean, if they have any, like, saying, what does your daughter do for a living? Oh, well, she does this, that, and the other. Well, don't like, knock my daughter, because guess what? We're to blame if anyone's unhappy. But she's done well for herself.
It's gone well. But it was just funny because for so many years they're like, "What are you doing with your life?"
There you go. On that note, we've got a song that, in some ways, I know it wasn't written for me, but actually, you almost could say it was written for me. It's a little ditty she wrote a while back called "Head Injury, Larry." We've got that for you, so let's take a look.
Hey guys, I'm Lahna Turner, and this is a song I wrote about a charity event I worked at a couple of years ago for a guy who had a really bad accident, but everybody at the event said that the guy came out of it better. He was just a better person as a result, which is a good thing, so I wrote him this song. Larry was a hellraiser, he liked to drive real spread.
Back with Lahna Turner here on Studio 411. Tell me, you actually met your late husband Ralphie May at a club in Houston. Is that correct?
Yeah, he was at the club there the first time I ever did stand-up, and I didn't want to date a comic. I never thought I would ever want to, just also because I was interested in being a comic. And Ralphie was, at the time, believe it or not, completely true, he was in the neighborhood of like 800 pounds, and I never thought we would ever date. And we ended up dating, but that was after we developed a friendship, and I really fell in love with him and who he was. And but he was very overweight, so I didn't think we'd date.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, I mean, that shows, and again, I'll bring the parents in on this. That's a credit to not only the way you were raised, and I think deep down you as a person, because a lot of people, I'm sure, said it, probably will think it whenever they'll say, wow, like you make the joke about your podcast, which I want to talk about that later, about how, you guys formed the perfect numeral 10. Even one of my associate producers was saying, yeah, I heard that bit about her and the number 10, and it's so perfect. It's like her, and then you got Ralphie, and it's like, it really is. So, but kudos to you, because a lot of people would just not look beyond that, girth, and they would just say, oh no, this can't,
I've learned a lot about myself, and I learned a lot going through the many years with him, which is, the inside is beautiful, and sometimes the exterior doesn't show that, but the exterior did show a very damaged person inside, and he had addiction issues from the very beginning, and I didn't understand what that meant. But Ralphie never did anything with subtlety. Everything was done big and over the top, and early on he did the good things big and over the top, and towards the end the addiction took over, and there was a lot of bad things over the top, and that's when things kind of shifted for us. But he was a sweet man, and I did fall in love with him, and I loved him with all my heart. We were together for 17 years.
Sure, and 2 children. So yeah, you have leaves quite a legacy. Being a stand-up comedian, doing a podcast, and raising 2 children, that might take a lot of energy and a lot of time management. Do you find that you, even during the time when you were obviously caring for Ralphie and helping his career, did you find that, looking back at it now, I mean, that you really had to kind of micromanage your time very carefully?
Yeah, and not successfully. I think that this is something that any mom is dealing with a husband with a thriving career, that oftentimes, you have to put a lot of your own career ambitions on the back seat. And I loved my opportunity to have children. As a female comedian, that's a hard thing to be able to navigate, because we're traveling a lot and it's hard to have a family, and we managed for many years. But yeah, there was always a lot of plates in the air, and plates crash down when there's a lot of them in the air. So I've always juggled a lot, but I'm proud of that. I don't think I'm alone in that effort. I think every human has to juggle a lot to get things handled, and especially moms.
Oh, absolutely. And as you well know, things just don't, happen, out of thin air. They take a lot of work, a lot of effort to make happen.
To make something, it's taken us 4 years just to get this film ready, and we're scrambling to premiere in 6 weeks.
Sure, and then after that'll be another project and another project, and then being on the road and doing her podcast. So believe me, I can relate. Do you think being funny sometimes is a hindrance to social interaction?
You mean like hanging out with other people being funny, or?
Yeah, I mean, because some people, like, I'll give you a bad example, but it's one of a few. We had another comic on a few years ago, and I found that, they were very good and everything else, and actually I kind of felt like I was almost drawn into that world. So that I remember the night we did the taping, and there was a lot of, humorous things that happened. Nothing was really planned, but I could kind of understand what a comic goes through, whether they have addiction issues or not, is that they just, almost like you're like so revved up that it's very hard to kind of decompress, and I, of all the talk show episodes I've done, I never quite had that same feeling, like, wow, I mean, I could see why these guys mainly, but gals as well, would have a tough time kind of then, you know, kind of decompressing, and then maybe even they would just want their privacy. They don't want to be bothered with people, and they kind of do an Elvis. They kind of retreat into their own little world. You know, do you find that, or probably not in your case, because you're a very like together person.
That's really a sweet observation. I mean, I think there's like multiple layers to the question that you asked, and it's different for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think that there's a lot of people who have a lot of demons that get into comedy. I think comedy is wonderful therapy. One, because you can take your hardship and make it funny, and then you're helping other people through their hardships. And it also feels great to make other people laugh, and it's instant gratification when you're on stage and you've written something and it makes a whole room of people just come to laughter. I mean, that's a wonderful thing to be able to do. So it's addictive as well, and it definitely, after you've had any show afterwards, it tends to be a letdown when you're done, because it's so much fun and you can't wait to get to the next stage. But I live a couple of different lives for myself right now. I mean, I have children and they go to school, so I go and take them to school. I don't know if anybody views me differently because of what I do, but I live in LA, so there's a lot of, you know, people with unusual professional outlets. A lot of people on TV or creating TV, so everyone kind of gets it. So, you know, socially, I have some really nice friends, and I'm lucky that way. But I do think it's hard, and I do think that there's a lot of access. Like when you do perform, I mean, I'll have people. I don't smoke weed, but I've had people put a joint in my pocket. I've had people do things after shows that I'm like, whoa, I could. There's open doors for anything that you could possibly want if you're on stage and people don't fully get it where you're at in your life. And so all you have to do is ask, and you can get things. And because even if you're not the most famous comic in the world, people love you for making them laugh, and I love them for laughing, and I'm grateful. I just want people's friendships and laughter. I don't really need much else after that. I've got, like you said, I'm busy. I've got kids to take care of.
You're grounded, is what I think.
I'm trying to stay.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm lucky. I have people in my life that keep me pretty grounded, but a lot of comics, a lot of people that I know and love dearly are damaged, and that's what makes them wonderful. And in art and in life, nothing is ever wonderful when it's perfect. If it's just too perfect, there's something wrong with it. And so I like damaged people.
Now, we see a lot of celebrities, of course, with substance abuse issues, not just comedians, musicians, Lord knows, you know, throughout. Why is that, you think? Is that kind of going back to the statement you just made before, that they're just their upbringing just lends them to falling into that trap of you know, alcohol addiction, substance abuse, or are they no different than any normal person who isn't in the entertainment field?
Yeah, you know, I think that you just hit it on the head. I mean, I'm not a physician, but I would definitely say that addiction crosses into all aspects of life all around the world. I mean, the opioid issue is one of the biggest problems, you know, of our time. I saw what it did to my husband. I mean, he was always addicted to substances, but when he got on opioids, it completely changed his entire being. And, you know, I don't think that's isolated to any one profession, and that's really, really sad. And I know this too only from my personal experience, because the more I've talked about it on stage, more people come up to me after the shows and just share their common experience. And unfortunately, it's not an unusual experience.
Right. Speaking of someone who helps people with addictions, we've got a photo of you and Dr. Drew there, of course. Yeah, he's great. I love him.
Drew, I just talked to him yesterday. He's going to be involved in the documentary. He's an EP on it. Yeah, oh my God, I love Dr. Drew. And there you go, for somebody who can actually help guide me and get us through the premiere of this movie. There's no one more perfect than him. That's so funny, because we haven't even we haven't finished even negotiating what he's going to do. He's wonderful. I'm such a big Drew fan.
It's like kismet, I'm telling you. Look at this, you know.
No, must have felt it.
We have a shot here. I love this clip. Now that Lahna, of course, is single and kind of, you know, getting back into the world, You know, of course, she does a lot of club work, a lot of casino dates. We've got a great clip about how sometimes, you know, everybody needs a little somebody. I know that's a famous line from a song. Maybe it was REM I was thinking about, but we have a clip from her and Buddy the Robot. Let's take a look.
You know, I get this feeling you've been following me around the casino because I've been seeing you everywhere. I know you're kind of a thing here, local celebrity and all, but I'm kind of a thing too. I'm performing up at the comedy club tonight, and you know, maybe you'd like to come by and see the show. You know, you're kind of sexy. I've never hung out with a robot before. Oh, you're female. Maybe after the show you'd like to, I don't know, come up to my room maybe. What type of batteries do you take? It could be so fun. Wow, you're kind of the strong silent type, aren't you? Oh, I get it. You're at work. You can't talk while you're at work. Why don't you come up to my room after the show? I'll give you a key. Here you go. You take that, and I'll see you later tonight. All right. Bye, buddy.
You know, buddy, you think you're so great, don't you? You just think you're so great. You know what? I had waited for you. I was waiting for you upstairs. No. Don't you start talking now. Don't you start talking now. I was waiting for you, and you didn't show. You son of a bitch. No, don't you turn your back to me. Don't you suck, buddy. You suck. Don't want to ever see you again. Go on, get out of here. Get. You know, nothing but a robot.
Hey girl, I'm sorry. Oh, come back. It doesn't have to be this way. Bitch.
There we go, lucky Buddy, I'm telling you. All right, back on Studio 411 with comedian Lahna Turner. Oh my goodness, I'm telling you, there's just so much to talk to you about. In the past 2 decades, how has comedy changed for better or worse? I mean, when I thought that question out, I thought, okay, just asking it from a 20-year period. However, with the way things are in our country today, we're divisive and just people kind of backbiting at every turn. I think I meant those almost as 2 separate questions. First, in the last 20 years since you've been in the business, how has comedy changed for the better? And then the second question, with the current dealings in politics, do you find that that's really been a downer for comedy?
Well, the better I would have to say is there's a lot more women in comedy now. When I first started, there was hardly any. In fact, it didn't even occur to me to go do stand-up because, to be honest, the only women that I saw doing stand-up were nothing like myself, for the most part. And so I'm really happy to see a lot of women just kicking butt at stand-up now. And still, by far, a small percentage of what is out there and available. But audiences also are super receptive. I mean, when I first started comedy, people would be like, oh, a woman on stage. And now people come out specifically to see a woman on stage. And I love that so much. So there's been a lot of change in that area. Politics, I'm not a super political comic, but I don't think there's ever been a lack of people being able to talk about politics. I'll slip a little bit of here and there into my set. But I don't think anybody's ever starving for stupid stuff in the world to talk about. But what I do see, which really sucks, is that people come down so hard. Like a lot of comics end up apologizing for stuff that they put up on Twitter or things that they've done 10 years ago. And in my mind, it's just like that's the wrong kind of pressure in a nation that wants to have a freedom of speech. People. You create an outlet like Twitter, and then people who do express themselves, whether you agree with them or not, get lambasted and shut down. And what's the point of having freedom of speech now? And then they end up having to apologize, and it's just, you know, and I just feel like that's not healthy for us to not have an open dialogue and be allowed to speak our minds. And I'm pretty fortunate so far. I've been lucky in that I've been able to say the things I want to say and stand behind them. And I think if you do say something 10 years ago and you regret saying it, then we've all done that. I mean,
I think what it is was that, you know, unless someone saw an old Johnny Carson or a David or early Letterman or something from back in the 60s, 70s, 80s, et cetera, you know, you would look at it and say, well, from a historical context, you could understand why maybe that wouldn't be as funny or maybe hold up as well. Maybe in some cases holds up even better. But I think, like I said, we're so wrapped our heads with, Second Amendment rights, and I think, just as important as you said is the First Amendment rights, which seem to be trampled, where no one can say anything without, oh my God, I offended this one. Well, I'll retract that and I'll amend it. Oh, now I've offended this one, and you know what? I'll just go like this, and you can figure out what I mean. So anyway. But
everyone has to be so careful, and social media, people are very. It's a really sad world when people troll behind their computers, and I guarantee somebody can say something real nasty on a computer to somebody else because nobody knows who they are. But as soon as you're identified, then it becomes a whole different thing. So that's not healthy. People trolling other people. I don't get that.
We have another clip of Lahna. We are just filled with clips that we could use. I had to dig very hard for clips that wouldn't get me thrown off the air. But anyway, no, that's fine. Hey, that's no problem. But we have a great clip of Lahna. Again, what happens when you're out and about and you need your beauty sleep to be able to perform for the nice audiences. We've got a clip, Lahna and the bagpipes. Let's take a look.
Oh, how is that? Bagpipes? Oh. I've got a Pachanga casino date, January 24th through 27th. I have got to get some rest. You remember you said I could call in a favor?
I have to ask, we have a clip with our guest Lahna Turner, you and Ron Jeremy. Ron, of course, for those who have been living under a rock for the last 40 years, Ron is a adult film star. So how do you know Ron?
I met him, he's one of these people that pop up a lot in the comedy circuit. He does stand up periodically. And so I've seen him in various places. He just pops up. And then he ended up doing an interview on our podcast. I did a segment for a while. I'll probably bring it back because people seem to love it. It was called Cooking with Porn Stars. And the idea is that everyone can cook and everyone can do that, but only a few people can do either one professionally. And
I'm writing that down for a future Studio 411, Cooking with Porn Stars. There you go. Very good, very good. Executive producer Lahna Turner. There you go. I like that idea. We got another clip that, again, very, very impressive. Ron White, who of course is a very funny guy, blue collar comedy, etc. And in the background, we've got comedy legend that goes way back to my era, Dick Smothers. Now tell me, how did you meet those two icons of comedy?
Well, it was just down the road from where I met you. It was at a club in Sarasota, Florida. I got to do a spot on Ron's show, which was amazing. He's got the best audience, and they were both just there at the end of the night, so we took that fun picture together.
And now you knew who Dick Smothers was, because I mean, Dick's kind of like semi-retired now. He had a winery at one point. I made the mistake on a radio show recently, and I said, I was talking about Boz Scaggs, and I said, that winery, Boz Scaggs, and I realized, no, it's Vintner, okay? If you're a wine guy, you're not a winery. You might be a wino, but you're a Vintner, okay? So I want to make sure I get that correct. Yeah, for a long time we're in California. There was the grape country. Is it Northern California?
Yeah.
Northern, yeah. So he, I'm assuming probably now he's taking it easy. But yeah, both great people. Got another shot of her. She just has all these celebrity friends. Smashing Pumpkins, Billy Corrigan. So how do you know Billy?
Oh, that was an interview I did in Chicago. And what's interesting about that interview is that the guy that did the interview with me, who had Billy on the same day, is in the documentary, and he is awful to me on camera, and every woman who sees him just cringes. So, but it was cool to meet Billy.
There you go.
He was really nice.
Now you were doing a bit there on social media.
I Billy. I just met him for a day.
There you go. It'll last a lifetime. Believe me, you'll probably work with him again.
Billy.
Probably. You were doing a bit for a while there where you were throwing pies at some of your guests or podcast guests. How did that come about? Do you like throwing pies?
I love pie. Like, I think that's one of those things that where did it go? Because it's always funny, and it's just fun to put a pie in someone's face. I've never been pied.
I noticed you're always the one holding the pie. Why is that, Lahna?
And it's all about the timing too, because when you're standing there, you notice I have a couple of those videos up online where I'm just about to get the person, but they don't know it's coming.
Yeah.
And the suspense is building, and then they sort of forget the pie is there, and then whack.
A good one to watch is look up old Soupy Sale clips. Soupy was a well-known comic and television star back in the 50s through the 70s and passed away, I don't know, about 10 years ago. He was the king of the pies in the face. I'm telling you, Soupy Sales.
It's always funny.
Yeah.
It's just always funny. I love the pie.
Unbelievable. Oh my goodness, we're just loaded with clips. We've got speaking of Lahna and her music and just her comedic talents, we've got a song she did, the Chicken Song. How did that come about?
That was one of the first songs I ever wrote for comedy, and I went and lived in Israel for 5 months. I did a kibbutz, which is like a live-work situation there. I'm Jewish, and so I was working on a farm, and there was a chicken house nearby where we were living. It smelled awful, but there was this one guy who would go down there, and he was responsible for getting rid of the chickens that weren't going to live, and he would kill the chickens, which made me really sad. And then I came up with the choking his chicken thing and wrote that song, and then it was one of my first comedy songs.
There you go. We've got it here for you on Studio 411 with our guest Lahna Turner. Let's take a look.
A 1 and a 2 and
Jesse was a farmer down in Arkansas. He raised chickens to feed everyone in town. We all knew that he was strange, but the times were gonna change when the righteous vegetarians came around. Now there ain't no nice way to kill a chicken. The thought's enough to make any man insane. Oh, but Jesse, he took pleasure and he went to extreme measure. He spared none of his poor birds any pain. 'Cause he liked choking his chicken, he liked choking his chicken. All thought he was out of his mind. 'Cause he liked choking his chicken, he liked choking his chicken. He'd pull his poultry all of the time. Well, those town folks, they got word of Jesse's actions. Said something so bad I can't believe them true. How he let anyone come see how he caused his bird misery, and let him join in if they wanted to. 'Cause he liked choking his chicken, he liked choking his chicken. Everybody wished that he would leave. 'Cause he liked choking his chicken, he liked choking his chicken. That poor bird barely had time to breathe. Well, those town folks, they tried to shut him down. But now it's up to the Lord who must decide. Because the case they did file, but it never went to trial. 'Cause poor old Jesse went ahead and died. Oh, it's awfully sad how it did all turn out. But I guess all stories must come to an end. At least it's not hard to see that when he died he was happy. 'Cause they found him with a dead cock in his hand.
oh yeah.
Back at it with our guest Lahna Turner here on Studio 411 in our remaining moments. Tell me, dream duet. Who would you like to perform with on stage? Singer, comedian, who is like someone, or even work with like doing a movie? You've done a couple of films. Some people that you've maybe never met that you would love to do something with.
Oh my God, that's such a hard question to answer. I mean, there's so many people off the top of my head. I mean, anything Adam Sandler's ever done is amazing, and he's an amazing comedy songwriter and amazing films that are always funny. So that would be awesome. I mean, that's such a long list. Like my head's just
laundry list of questions. Now, with everything you've got going on, and of course, I think we all have this problem to a certain degree. Again, whether it's because of computers and social media and pressures and whatever. But what do you do to relax? What hobbies do you have that maybe the audience doesn't know that Lahna likes to do?
Do I get to relax? That's
yes, you get to relax. There you go. I know it's hard with 2 kids, but I mean, do you like collecting stamps, butterflies? What do you like to do to unwind?
I collect people. I try to collect good people in my life, which that's a hard thing to find sometimes, but I have a lot of good people that I love very much. And I mean, I honestly don't have a lot of free time. I love to work out and exercise, and in doing that I don't like the gym. I like to be outside and doing fun things. So that's one of my guilty pleasures, but it's really not relaxing. So I have so few hours in the day that I actually get for myself. I don't remember the last time I sat down and watched a movie for fun.
Wow.
It's just all about the kids now, and they're at that age where they need me. And I'm not just a single mom. I'm an only mom. I mean, I don't have the support. I don't have child support. It's been a hard couple of years, but we're getting through it, and the kids are amazing, and they're really my life.
When you were a kid growing up in high school, who was your first celebrity crush?
In high school?
We're gonna freeze that shot. That's a great shot. I love that.
First celebrity
crush. Yeah, music, actor. You know, I mean, what were you, Backstreet Boys girl? No pun intended. No pun intended.
You know what's so funny is what comes to mind is like not dudes, but rather like Sarah McLachlan and Tracy Chapman and like, you know, some of the female songwriters that I loved so much were probably my first celebrity crushes. Not, I don't think in a lesbian way, but maybe. I don't know. I just
the things we learn on this show, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, all of a sudden I just realized I didn't know.
Who would you pick, living or dead, to sit down and have dinner with and talk to that you've never met or couldn't meet because they're no longer here?
You know, this is going to sound really silly. The first thing that came to mind was Albert Einstein, because he was supposed to be really funny.
Yeah.
I mean, some of his quotes are hilarious. So not so much because I'd want to like talk science with him, because that would not work for me, but just because he was so wise and funny. That would be an interesting one to talk to.
Now, as a comedy writer, a musician, so a songwriter as well, do you find that it's difficult to keep that fire and inspiration, or are you just bounding with ideas all the time?
That's a great question. My inspiration works in waves. So like whatever I'm focused on is really where my creative energy gets driven into. So I might have a time or a spurt where I write a bunch of songs because that's just where my energy is focused. Or I'll be working creatively on something else, like some of the videos that you saw or whatever. It's just whatever I'm focusing on in the time. And I think it's important to constantly be trying different things creatively and then going back to other things. Otherwise, I think the well dries up a little bit.
And now, what advice would you give as the mother of two young children growing quickly before your eyes? What would you give advice to mothers who are trying to raise strong, independent children in a world that's been slow, especially your daughter, that has been slow to put women in power? What would you do to ensure that she becomes a force in the world? The boys usually have it easy, but it's the girls that. Like you said, when you started in the business, you had people that looked at you like, "Wow, you want to do comedy? Please go get a job doing something else." I'm sure that happened. But so, what would you say to a young girl, your daughter, or someone else? Okay, to strive to become like the best they can be.
I mean, I fully believe we can be anything we want to be in life, and I think that sounds really trite, but it's true. I have a friend that I grew up with who. He paints with bubble gum, and he sells paintings of gum that he chews. So basically, he chews gum and sticks it to a board, and he makes beautiful paintings with it. And when I think about that, I'm just like, wow, you really can figure out a way to make a profession out of something that you love. So, I mean, what I pray for my kids is that they're happy, because I think for all the different things that we try to focus on, happiness is the one thing sometimes we lose sight of. And so that to me means success. And as a woman, you know, that's a whole bucket of worms. I don't think we have enough time to talk about the issues that lay in front of my daughter, but she's a smart little girl, and she'll find her way in the world. And I'm super proud of the person she's becoming and is.
Our guest, Lahna Turner, some quotes. "No small laughs," says comedycritic.com. "Some of the best musical comedy I've ever heard." Cafe Mom Studios, quote, "Lahna Turner is a crass comedian in the deceptively sweet package." I love that quote. And All Access Magazine, "Lahna is truly hilarious." And I think that certainly shines through. We are going to leave you with a clip that I think is certainly interesting is not even a word I can think of. It's just amazing in its own way. Lahna, we thank you for spending a few moments with us. Best of luck with the projects. We look forward to having you back to talk more about what's going on and keeping Ralphie's legacy alive. And as I said, we want to see you on the London Palladium within 2 years. Madonna can do it, you can do it. So.
What a great show. Thank you so much.
No problem.
So many good things. Thank you.
You hang in there with us, and we thank you for joining us here on Studio 411. Larry DeSilva is my name. We leave you with a clip called Helen Keller and Anne Frank. Enjoy the musical experience, and we'll talk to you again real soon. Take care.
This is one of my favorite new songs because it's a historical song. It's a duet between two of my favorite women in history. So this is a song if Anne Frank and Helen Keller got together and sang a duet. It might go something like this. The amazing Anne Frank and Helen Keller. So I had this idea tonight when I was coming over here. How awesome would it be to divide the room down the middle and do it as a duet? Around and around. So all of you over here, you can be Helen Keller. And all of you on this side, Anne Frank. I know there's some juice because I can smell you. Ready? Let's do it. Come on. Ready? Seriously, right? That was beautiful.